Hi, I'm Lori George, an acrylic artist with Let's Make Art, and we are here today to work on this Tulip Bouquet project.
Beautiful.
We have Keenan here running our camera.
Hello.
Hi, Keenan. Hello. And let's talk about our supplies. So today we are going to be using our primary colors: yellow, primary red, primary yellow, primary red, primary blue. We have Mars black and titanium white. Okay. Then we are going to be using Let's Make Art paper here. You might want a couple of sheets. We're going to do some warm-ups, and we're also going to, I like to use an extra sheet for a brush-off board to use extra paint on, if you wanted to follow along and do that. You also might want an outline here and some graphite paper. And then if you got the acrylic starter box, you might have some sample palette paper, like here, or you can use whatever palette that you have. I'm using a glass palette today.
The palette paper is magical.
It's pretty neat.
And that glass palette is so easy to clean.
Yes. And normally, so if you go on our website and you're looking for palette paper, it's gonna come in a pad just like our regular watercolor paper does. And I like to use the pads, and I like to have multiples of them because I like to have lots of palettes going. Okay, today I'm gonna be using the 1/2 inch flat brush here, and also a 3/4 inch flat brush there. And you'll want some water. I've got a water basin here that I'm gonna use, and then a paper towel of some sort. I like to use shop towels. And any of that work. Okay, I think those are our supplies. Should we talk about the steps?
Yes.
Let's talk about the steps. Okay, so number one though, if you've ever wanted to paint expressive florals, this is a tutorial. And so bring your brave face, be courageous, you can totally do it. That's the first thing. Now let's talk about our steps. So first we're gonna put in our background, and then we're going to let that dry. Then we're going to put in our outline, transfer that. Then we're gonna do our first layers of our blooms, followed by first layers of our leaves and stems. Then we're gonna do some more with leaves and stems, highlights and accents, and then our final touches.
Nice.
Sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay, let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually do some warm-ups, because with this floral piece here, in order to paint loose, you have to be free and let go, right? In order to paint loose, we don't want to paint too tight on our brush where we're really controlling the strokes. We want to have a lighter grip and hold towards the end of the brush so that we can really get those nice fluid strokes. So let me show you some samples of that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make some green by having some yellow and some blue. And then for fun, I'm just going to add some white.
Just for funsies.
For funsies, yeah. Okay, now always start with a slightly dampened brush, so I'm just gonna kind of rub it in there and then dab off the excess water. And then I'm gonna pull this over here just a tiny bit more. Does that look good?
Oh, thanks.
Okay, all right, so I'm going to do a blue-green, so I'll start with a little bit of blue, and I'm gonna add some yellow in there. And maybe a little more. Okay, and a little touch of white. Watch this.
Ooh.
Nice. Okay. Now, in order to get the expressive strokes that we're going for, we need somewhat of a fluid paint. And so to do that, we're going to add some water. So my goal is to have it glide across with my brush as opposed to drag or feel stiff, if that makes sense.
That does make sense.
Okay. And then one thing I'm also going to do, so this happens to me a lot when I'm mixing my paint with a paintbrush as opposed to like a palette knife, which might be the more official way to do it. I always mix with a brush though. And sometimes you might get a little bit of gloppiness towards the toe or the heel of the brush down here. So I'm just gonna kind of go like this. I'm gonna kind of scrape it once and scrape it twice, and then kind of dip it and keep most of the paint towards the toe of the brush, the top part of the brush. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did you say totally?
Totally.
Okay, so here I have a fairly fluid paint, and my brush is loaded, and so what I'm gonna do is I am just gonna come and make a comma shape, okay? And then I'm gonna push down a little further and a little more. And I just want you to play and see what types of strokes you can get with the various movements that you make. I'm sort of making a little bit of a curved shape like this. Comma shape, kind of a curved dash like that, okay? And you can add, I can go ahead and add another, make it fun and add some yellow here.
Get some more color in there.
Yeah. So we're gonna be doing quite a few of these, so take a few minutes and get comfortable with the strokes so that when it comes to putting them onto your painting, you feel more confident. Yeah, sound good?
That sounds great.
And the thing about it too is that right now I'm painting onto dry paper that doesn't have anything else on it. When we get to this step with this piece, you're gonna already have a coat of acrylic paint as your background, and so it'll flow a little bit better, you'll find. Right now it's very absorbent. Okay, so just practice making a few little, and I'm holding it kind of up and down, and then I'm moving it to a slight ankle, and I'm just kind of pulling. So pull and pull.
Those look cool.
What do you think?
I like those.
Okay, and if I want a lighter touch, I'm gonna just flick it a little faster, okay? Flick, flick. Okay, can we do that? If you want a longer stroke, add a little bit more water. Let's have a nice fluid loaded brush and then just pull it longer.
Ooh.
Like that. So honestly, like this is expressive, it's loose, so there aren't a lot of rules. You can do it however you would like, and if you find a method that works best for you, go for it.
Perfect.
That's what I say. Now I don't want to stop. Okay, so that's some practice for you. I'm gonna go ahead and wipe. Actually, one other thing that I like to do, like I said, is have a extra piece of paper available so I can just brush off my extra paint and look at that beautiful color. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. You can do that if you want to, or just simply wipe the excess paint off on your paper towel or your shop towel and then rinse your brush. Okay, so now we're ready to get started on our background, and I'm going to switch to my 3/4 inch flat brush. And what we're gonna do is we are going to create a U shape using some darker paint. I'll show you here actually on the step sheets here. So we're gonna create a U shape here with dark paint underneath, and then we're gonna add we're gonna add white to kind of create some highlight in the background here. Just add a little bit more contrast.
Sweet.
Okay, so we're gonna make this dark teal color or a dark green. You can kind of adjust the shade or the color by adding more or less blue. So what I'm gonna do is start with black. Okay. And you're gonna need a fairly good amount. You wanna make sure that you have enough to cover without having to mix a lot. And so that's a pretty generous pile, and these paints are nice size, so definitely don't hesitate to use lots of paint.
Never fear, the paint is here.
That's right. Okay, so I'm gonna dampen this brush. And this is a brand new brush, so it's gonna take a little tiny bit more. Okay, I love brand new brushes. So let's take our black paint here. And actually, I think I'm gonna use most of this pile. So I'm gonna kind of pull it here. And then I'm gonna grab some blue and start mixing that in. And what you'll wanna also do is add a tiny bit of yellow. Okay, and then I'm gonna add a tiny bit of white. So right now it just looks like all black, right? So you can't hardly tell what colors are kind of in there. And so when I add a little bit of white, see how you start to see what is there? And I know that I want more blue. So I'm gonna add quite a bit more blue. And add some more yellow. Okay, kind of feeling what I'm doing here?
Yep.
Okay, so if you get a little bit of a gloppy mess, no worries, just kind of wipe it on your palette. Okay, we're ready to get started.
Sweet.
So I'm gonna add a little bit of water too, actually, just to make sure the paint is nice and fluid and not sticky or dragging on your paper. We don't want that. All right, here we go. So I'm gonna come onto my page. It looks really messy. I'm gonna come onto my page and I'm gonna make a big U shape, okay? So right away I'm seeing that I want more blue in here and a little bit more white. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. A little more blue. And some white. Now, I don't want to put too much white in here because I know that I want to add white to add kind of a lighter value up top to make it look like the light is kind of coming down. Yeah, okay, here we go. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna make kind of a U shape and then I'm gonna fill in this bottom portion with this dark value that we mixed. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of fill that in. And I see how I'm going in a curved shape, curvilinear U shape here. I'm kind of following.
Horseshoe.
Horseshoe, there you go. And also see how I paint off the edge of the page. If you want to tape your paper down, feel free. I don't always do that. Actually, I don't probably usually do that because I like to paint to the edge of my painting. So do make sure that you have a surface underneath you that can get a little messy.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's why we have our surface. That's okay to get a little messy.
That is. So I'm just going to keep working, and because acrylic paint dries fairly quickly, especially when you're working on a porous surface like paper, you just want to move somewhat quickly. So, all right, when I get to about this point, I'm going to go ahead and add quite a bit of white to my mix here. And then I am going to kind of start blending in. So I'm going to start, I'm going to dab some of that off there. I'm going to try and blend in with this curve shape here so that it's a little more of a gradual transition from the dark teal to the lighter color.
Man, I like that.
I'm not going to fret too much about it. Now, if you feel like it's too thick or it's kind of dragging, you can add a tiny bit of water. You don't want it to be too thin. You want to be able to cover all the white of the page, but definitely workable. You want it to be workable. And what I'm going to do now is just kind of go back into some of that lighter color and kind of make a little more of a transition there. I don't want it to be a giant, obvious U shape. I want it to kind of blend. Exactly.
I love that.
So I'm going to kind of
lighter color.
Yeah, you can bring a little bit of it down too. Just kind of work that in there. Just make it look a little more real, organic. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm just going to take a quick peek and look and see if I have any like white dots showing through. And I'm just going to try and cover those real quick. If you see some later that you missed, don't worry. That happens all the time, and we can cover it later. Okay, so that is your background. What I'm going to do now is dry it with our heated craft tool. Mm-hmm. And it's going to take a few minutes probably to get it all the way dry. So while we're doing this, Keenan, have you ever painted an expressive floral?
I have never painted an expressive floral.
Have you painted flowers before?
I have, actually.
Have you?
I painted, I've been to Tulip Festival.
Nice.
In Utah.
Oh, nice.
And I was briefly taught by Sarah how to paint a tulip.
Very nice.
So then I taught people how to paint that one thing for 2 days.
So you shared that knowledge. I like it.
Yes.
One thing I was going to mention too is that I'm going to give you a recipe for making this floral piece, but you can totally change the color palette and change even the flower shapes and make it your own. I actually like to work in multiples when I'm at in my own area, at my own studio, and I like to have a few going, and I'll change up the colors just a little. Like maybe I'll have one that's a little more blue tone in the background, or one that might have a little more gray in it. I do like having a darker value background for the piece that we're doing, because it helps make the flowers really pop. But yeah, like working in multiples, you don't have to sit here and wait for something to dry, actually, because I just keep going, and then by the time I get back to the first piece, after working on the other ones, it's usually dry.
That makes sense.
Yeah. It's a pretty nice tool here, and it's not very loud.
Yes, it's very
nice.
handy.
Yeah.
Very small, very packable. Akin to a hotel hairdryer.
I'm familiar. Yes. You do want it to be nice and dry and not tacky, because if I go to paint on a tacky surface with the acrylic paint, it's going to leave kind of a really not very nice texture.
Oh.
And I know that from experience.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Yes. Yeah, you can, when it's dry and you don't see the glossy sheen anymore, you can really see the brush strokes. We want to embrace the brush strokes for sure. One of the beautiful things about painting with acrylic and even this flat brush, the acrylic is a heavier body than some others, like craft paint and whatnot, or watercolor. So that really holds the brush strokes nicely on here.
Yeah, I love the expressiveness of the brush strokes right now, just on the background.
Yeah.
Because no longer,
Should
like
we
you
stop
said,
there? Should we just not do anymore?
Yes.
Just kidding. That would be really lame.
That caught me off guard, Lori.
Sorry.
Should we stop there? What?
Okay. All kidding aside, we are totally going to continue because you need to make this project and enjoy the process if you can. That would be great. All right, so let's get our outline out here and our graphite paper. And actually, you know what? I'm looking at this brush here, and one little reminder, you do not want to leave your paintbrush with acrylic paint on it too long because it'll dry and it's permanent and you can definitely ruin your brushes. So I'm just gonna kind of dab off this extra paint and then rinse off. Be responsible.
Good save.
It's good. This brush basin, this water basin, it has ridges under here on this side, and so I'm just running the brush back and forth to help clean the bristles. And then if I need to get more off of this part, then I can just kind of rub over here.
Yeah, that basin is a clutch tool.
Nice. It is nice. Okay. And if you get paint on the ferrule, you can just, which is the metal part, you can just kind of go like this. Pull that off, and then finish washing, and you're good to go. Okay. So let's go ahead and do our outline. So with your graphite paper, and this will be inside of the Let's Make Art Matter envelope, the clear little bag, if you're looking for it, if you have the starter box. I'm going to use the glossy side down, put that on here. And one thing to note is with this being a darker background, the black will show up a lot better if you use a firm pressure as opposed to, now when you do watercolor, you might use a light pressure because you don't want the marks to show, but we're gonna cover most of that, so don't worry too much. And I'm going to position my paper so that I am lining this up at the bottom. If that makes sense.
That does make sense.
Line the stems up at the bottom. And I'm just gonna kind of center it there, and then I'm going to tape this. This is the Holbein soft tape.
Is that a new roll?
It might be.
Nice.
It might be. Okay, I'm gonna tape that down there. And then using your pencil, I'm just gonna use this color pencil today so you can kind of see my marks. I'm just gonna start transferring the outline. So I'm gonna start with kind of these big blooms. I like using a color because then I can see where I have traced.
Smart.
Yeah. You don't have to use the outline if you wanna kind of eyeball it. You're totally welcome to do that. One thing too is if you just want to transfer the outline for the stems, so that for the blooms, so that you kind of have the placement in the composition of our flowers, you can do that and then leave the stems off and just paint those. Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
That'd be a good practice.
Yes. And that's one way too, like to not have to be exact when you're doing your stems. But I'm going to go ahead and transfer my stems also. I love this color.
Yeah,
this magenta color is nice.
Is this the project with the pencil? This is it?
The project?
You know.
Oh.
The turntables.
Oh, how the that's funny. Office reference, nice. Okay, so I think I've got it. Let's check it out here. Voila.
Cool.
Can you see that?
Yep.
Awesome. We don't need it super dark, but just dark enough that you can see it. that off to the side. Okay, so the next step is to work on our blooms. I am going to use a separate palette for our blooms so that I have enough room to do, actually no, I'm gonna turn this. I tend to need a lot of palette space, but in this studio we have, since the palette is a glass palette, it reflects the light, so we're trying to be careful that you guys have a nice view and not too much glare.
It's a tricky.
So we're still working that out, but I think we'll be good. Yes. Okay, I'll save that for later in case I need it though, because I'm all about lots of palette space. Okay, so using your 3/4 inch flat brush, go ahead and we're gonna get some red and some yellow paint out. So when I created this project, I wanted to create some tulip blooms that were related in terms of kind of the colors that were in them. So like we go from a yellow to a peach to a warm peach to a red. So like I'll show you that what I'm gonna do is I'm going to start with the yellow, and then without cleaning my brush, I'm gonna keep going until I put all of the base layers of the blooms in. And what that does is it helps to create some continuity and some relationship between your colors.
Cool.
So it's a nice, nice to do. And you don't have to wash your brush as much.
Perfect.
So that works, right?
That's what I'm all about.
You're all about, yeah. Okay, so I'm also gonna grab some more white and put it there. Okay, alrighty. So starting with yellow here. Now I'm gonna go ahead and mix a tiny bit of white with my yellow to help it to be more opaque. Yellow is one of those colors that just doesn't cover quite as well by itself. And so if you add just a little bit of white, that'll help it to be more opaque.
I was gonna ask if that was because it's a lighter tint compared to like a blue.
Lighter value.
Lighter value?
I think that has something to do with it, and maybe just like the pigment itself.
Okay.
Like what it's derived from. And I actually want to add, I want to have kind of a warm yellow, and so I'm gonna add a tiny bit of red. Like an orangey yellow, a little bit. Okay. So that's a good start right there.
That's a great color.
Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna find, so this is the shape that I'm gonna have my yellow tulip. And you know what, maybe I should I use this the smaller one here as the reference? There we go. And I'm going to create a U shape here. You do not have to follow this shape exactly. This is kind of just more of an idea. And so we know that tulips are somewhat U-shaped, so I'm gonna kind of put in that U. If you get a little like chunk of paint, that's from the background. Don't worry about it, because we're gonna add so many layers. We won't show. All right, so once I kind of fill in this general curve here for the tulip, I'm gonna go a little bit rogue, and I'm gonna add like a little thing here. And nice. What I'm doing is I'm holding it straight up and down, and then I'm leaning it back and then pulling my brush, just to make it look like it's slightly open.
That's nice.
You like that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna leave that to dry, and then we'll come back in a few minutes to add another layer to that. Meanwhile, I'm gonna pick up a little more red, and I'm going to mix, I might add a little more yellow too to make a little bit more paint. I'm gonna mix a nice peach color. And again, I didn't wash my brush out, so we're just gonna kind of go from one to the next. Adding, yep. A little more white. Okay, so we're getting close to that base peach color. And our base color is gonna be a little bit darker than what like the final color is, because the final color is gonna have some more white added to it to add some dimension. Sound good?
Yes.
Awesome.
I love those little highlights.
I'm gonna add a little bit more white though to make it a little more opaque. The nice thing about acrylics is that you can always paint over them. You can always go back and add another layer. It can also become a problem.
I was gonna say.
Because you might not know when to stop.
Right.
And that's okay too.
Could get a
You kind of learn.
become a pretty heavy project.
Yes,
If
it
you
could.
just keep layering it up.
Honestly, that's another reason to paint in multiples, because you don't feel so much pressure to make one of them perfect. You can kind of be working, and then by the end of the day, if I've done 4, maybe I love one and like 2, and maybe there's one that kind of gets made into a layer for a background for another painting, and that's okay. Like, that's totally fine. But it does help if you're wanting to paint loosely to paint in multiples.
That's cool. That is a good idea.
Awesome. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, and honestly, I see some green in that brush. If you get green on your paintbrush and you don't clean it out well, it will start to change the color of your other. It will start to kind of seep in there. And most of the time, I don't worry about that
Darn
too
green.
much. Yeah, but I can start to see that it's kind of taking over a little bit. Get that nice and clean. There we go. Okay, so but using this same pile, I'm going to add a little more red, because now we're going to come over here and do this warm pink color. When you're mixing a color into using the same color in both, how do I say that? So when you use the same pile to mix a new color, you are creating that relationship between the colors, which I think is really nice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
Yeah, like you are.
Why start anew when old is gonna do?
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so I'm just going for a warm pink tone here. And I'm going to paint this tulip over here. And if you start to get a little bit of a drag there, you're just going to need to add a little bit more paint and mix a little more. Don't be shy about using lots of paint. That's how you learn, really, is to explore. Okay, there we go. Basically what I'm looking for is to make sure that this looks a little bit different from this, and that this looks a little bit different from this. So
we want that.
We want that. Yeah, that's kind of one of the aspects of this project. We will be doing like a couple that kind of are similar here, kind of a cooler pink tone.
They're like cousin flowers versus sibling flowers.
Okay, if you want to think about that way, I think that's fine. Why not? Yeah. I love tulips. They were my favorite flower for a long time. I think when I got older, I was sad that they didn't last very long, but I love them in yards. Like when they pop up first thing in the spring, I think that's great.
Yeah, they're gorgeous.
Yeah.
Tulips really are a gorgeous flower.
They are, and there's so many varieties also.
Yeah.
You know, like you can just get so many different kinds. So I'm adding red now to here. So I'm still using some of this peach or like warm pink tone, and I'm adding some more red because I'm going to go up here and paint. Actually, I'm going to come here and I'm going to paint the red flower. But this is going to be a slightly warm red. So that means I'm going to add a tiny bit of yellow in there. And a little bit more red. Okay? So I'm going to paint this flower here. Ooh, look at that.
That's a great color.
Since my paintbrush already had some white in it, that's helping with the coverage and making it more opaque. But we're also going to come and add more layers. And no worries to make it exactly the shape that's there. In fact, just cover the lines a little and then kind of enjoy discovering what shape it wants to be in. If that makes sense. There you go. Okay. So I'm not going to fill it with too much because I know I'm going to add more layers. So we are good there. I'm going to now go ahead and wipe off a little more on my brush because now I'm going to come in and do these pink tones here. And this is this uses more of the red and less of yellow. So I'm going to add some white. You see how that's a little cooler of a pink?
I love how you can add white and it changes that red so much.
It's fun, isn't it?
It is so fun.
And do you know, Keenan, what adding white to a color is called? What does that make it?
Yes, I do know. I do know this.
Please inform us.
I am getting ready to inform you of the word. It is not.
Uh-oh.
It is not shade. It's the opposite of shade.
Mm-hmm. You're almost there. I'm just going to let you figure this out.
Okay, I'm going to figure it out.
Starts with a T.
Is it tint?
It is tint.
Yes. I doubted myself so hard.
You knew it. I know you knew it because
Oh
we
my
talked about
goodness.
it so much. We
I
just,
know.
when we filmed the color wheel
Yes.
tutorial, Keenan was like, I learned this. And
Yes,
he even
and-
reviewed. Yeah,
And
yeah.
after, I guess, a half hour, I mean, it started to stick so much better. And then
Yeah.
a half hour later, I have doubted myself.
Right?
You know what? But this is why we're here, to learn and to get better at it.
To learn and to get better. That's right.
That's right.
It's always about improving and
Exactly.
yeah. And really, honestly, I was going to talk about like our whys. Why? Think about your why of why you're attracted to watching this video, why you're interested. Are you here to have fun? Are you here to learn? Maybe like for me, sometimes I just need some time to decompress and just do something fun where I don't have to think and I can just relax. So think about your why for painting and don't be afraid to just say, you know what? I paint just to paint. I paint just to paint.
Yeah.
That's something I say a lot.
And I feel like your why doesn't have to be the same every time.
No, it really doesn't. Because we have different days.
Oh,
I do
yeah.
want to mention, so I want this tulip to be in the background. And so I'm going to add a tiny bit of white so that this tulip kind of comes to the foreground a little bit more. So, still the same basic hue, but I'm kind of making it a little bit lighter. Okay?
I like that.
And then I'm going to go ahead and copy this one, the same shade, same color, same tint, actually.
Same
if we're being
tint?
exact, yeah.
Yes,
We tend to
okay.
kind of use those words interchangeably, but here we go. So I'm going to make a little baby tulip.
Itty bitty
What do you think? It's
love
cute.
it.
You want to have a variation in your size of the tulips and in the shapes slightly, right? You still want it to look like a tulip, but have some variety and don't worry too much about perfection because we're going to add some more layers. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and clean my brush off. Here's my little brush board here. Wipe off the extra paint. Okay. Ooh, that's kind of pretty.
That is pretty. And those are good color combos. Will you put that over the painting so we can see?
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't want to lay it right on there because I don't want it to
yeah.
stick.
We just,
Yeah.
we want to see the beauty too.
So I love doing this. I love just having my extra paint and just kind of seeing what I can come up with.
Cool.
And sometimes I love it and sometimes I don't, but I enjoy the process.
Yeah.
That's always the case. All right. So this yellow one is fairly dry. So I'm going to go ahead and start adding a little bit of dimension here. And so I don't have to wash my paintbrush out all that much since I'm kind of going back to similar colors. I don't have to worry too much. All right, so if your palette starts to dry out, you can use a spray bottle, mist it with some water. This is a continuous spray bottle that's well loved, as you can see. And so just a little spray will help keep your paints from drying out.
Good tip.
Good tip. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and put some more yellow here. And I'm gonna add a tiny bit of red like we did before to warm it up. And then I'm gonna add some white also. Okay? And I think I wanna add a teeny bit. I love how in this one we have a little bit of the orange coming
Yes.
through in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. I'm gonna add a little bit more red. Okay, get a nice soft orange color. And so with this one, I'm going to add another layer, but I don't want to make my second layer the exact same shape because I want some of the base layer to show through. And so I'm going to kind of be strategic, and I can tell I already want that to be a little bit darker. Maybe not quite this dark. Actually, it might not be bad. I kind of push off some of this extra paint I've got on here. Actually, that's not bad. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of just make some downward strokes like we did with our practice and fill that there, but I wanna leave some yellow popping through. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit of white while it's still wet, wet on wet. I'm gonna add a little yellow in there, okay? And then kind of add some different, add this lighter tint on there too. And don't be afraid to have some dry brush strokes. I think that looks nice. I think it adds to the expressiveness of the piece. And so I might even do some on purpose, like that. Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna leave that to dry, and then we'll come in and add some more of our yellow layers in a minute here. So meanwhile, I'm gonna go ahead and go back to this peachy color. So this flower here. And once again, I'm just kind of going from pile to pile and working more paint in into making my different colors.
And you're still not really rinsing that brush too much.
No, not with the warm tones here for the, and then, so I'm gonna add a little bit of red. What I do want though with this next layer is for it to be a little bit different than the bottom layer, because that's gonna be what adds dimension. So I can decide if it's gonna be a little bit lighter, a little bit darker, a little bit warmer, or a little bit cooler. Does that make sense? So like for this one, I want it to be, I'm gonna add some white and make it a little bit lighter. And then I made it a little bit pinker. Oh. So I added a little bit more red.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna come here and I'm just gonna kind of,
ooh, that's nice.
this is gonna be a little looser though. And I'm gonna try and vary so that I have some strokes that are a little bit wider and some that are a little thinner. And then again, I like the dry brush look, so I'm gonna kind of play with that. Maybe I'll even go like that. Okay, so that's the second layer of that one. And I'll wipe off some of that extra paint there. And you don't have to worry about mixing super well when you're working within the same colors there, color tones there. I think our pile, so I'm gonna work on this next, which is a little bit more of a warm pink. So I'm gonna grab some of this, add it to our peach pile there. Okay, and then I'm gonna go ahead and make this a lighter value by adding some white. And so what I'm looking at right now is I'm looking at the original and I'm saying, okay, here's my base layer here, here's my original. Looks like I have a few strokes that are a little bit darker than the base, and then some that are a little bit more pink and lighter. So let's see what this does here. And sometimes if it's real similar to, it just helps fill in. Okay.
And I love those layers.
Are they nice? Yeah, yes. Like the more you get going, the more that you really appreciate them.
Right.
And I need some more white, so I'm gonna add some more white to my page, to my palette. All right. And you know what, I'm gonna be generous. I know we're gonna be using more. Okay, so I'm gonna add some white here to lighten this up, give it a little more tint, and then I'm gonna go in and add another layer. And you don't have to mix it all the way. In fact, it's kind of cool. See how there's some striation there? Like there's some white coming through, and then there's some stripes, really thin stripes of pink. I'm gonna embrace that, okay? And I'm just gonna dab this a few times instead of going all over, okay?
Okay.
Something like that.
I like that.
And just trust, like you don't have to make it perfect. Do not be finicky at this stage. This is really just adding dimension to layers, and it's not the final layer. So just kind of have fun, don't worry too much. All right, so now we're gonna move on to our red flower. So I'm gonna go ahead and wipe this one. I'm going to wipe this one off so I can really get a nice, vibrant red. Ooh, look at that.
I love those colors.
Those
and the combos really of what you've already had on there with that, choice.
And you can make some little marks here if you really want to kind of get into some abstract. Okay, won't get too carried away.
Oh dear.
You got to stop me
Lori.
if I, go too far. Okay. So I'm gonna go and rinse my brush. And then I'm going to go into my red here. So my yellow flower is kind of my focal flower, meaning that it's kind of the focal point of the piece because it stands out, but my red is close behind. And so I want my red to be a nice vibrant red so I can come in with some highlights on top to add some dimension. So I'm gonna go ahead and use mostly red, mix it into this pile that we had here before, and then a little bit of white just for opacity. There we go. So I'm gonna go ahead and just add another layer on there. Woo! Look how vibrant.
Ooh.
So this is kind of, this is just one more layer, and I'm not gonna fuss too much with it. So we're gonna trust that we'll keep going. And in fact, you can, if you want, go ahead and add a little bit of white, mix it into this pile, and then add a tiny bit of yellow, just so that we don't get too close to this color here, this kind of cool pink. Okay. And then let's just go for it. Let's just add some more. Ready?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm in love with
That's
layers.
all I'm gonna do. You might be tempted to just like mix and mix and mix and mix and mix, but then you're just gonna kind of have no more variation, and it's gonna be all the same color and same tone or tint, right? Oh, see, I just did it again. Okay, so resist the urge. I know it's hard, but you can do it. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and add another layer to our cool pink colors. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of wipe some of this paint off. Actually, I'll use my towel. And to get that cool pink, we were using mostly the primary red and then adding some white to it. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'm gonna move my water over here, do my little more room. Okay, so I'm gonna make a pile here with my, and I have some water sprayed on my palette, so actually it's kind of helping me out here to make it a little more of a fluid paint. Add some white. And then the main thing here that I'm trying to do is get something that's different from this. So I'm gonna go lighter. There we go. And see how there's some red in there? Like, I'm just gonna kind of leave that. It's not fully, fully mixed. Yeah.
In.
And I'm just gonna embrace that.
Oh, look at the little lines in that one.
So, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, and this one I want a little bit darker. So what I'll do is just kind of add a little more red into it. So it's a little bit of kind of playing around until you get it to a point where you are very satisfied with it. So I'm gonna kind of do that because what I'm trying to do is make this one eventually look like it's more of a closed bud. So I'm gonna add a little bit of the dark there because it's gonna create a little bit of a shadow. Okay, so I can still go in while it's wet and add the white now. And then okay, so what I did is I still have just the primary red and the white, but this is more of a medium value compared to what's here, a little bit lighter even. And then I'm just gonna kind of bring some petals in the front.
Yeah.
Okay, so that makes it look a little bit more closed. And actually, if I just kind of do a curved, there, nice. A little bit more. And then I can even add some more white. And I'm only gonna add white in a couple spots on this one because I don't wanna get too carried away. So I'm just gonna kind of pick where I want the highlights to fall. And I'm just gonna pick here and here, okay? And I'm gonna trust that and leave that because we are not done. While you have this color, you can, actually while we have this color, let's go ahead and bounce back to this one down here. And I'm just gonna use the same mix that I just mixed and kind of just add a little layer, okay? So it's subtle, but you can definitely see that we're adding some dimension. Can you see that, Keenan?
Yes, I can. That's what I'm loving about all the layers you're adding, because it's making them come alive slowly but surely.
Yes. And you don't have to like follow along exactly what I'm doing. Just keep in mind the basic ideas of it in terms of trying to create a lighter or darker value to add dimension to your tulip form, right?
Got it.
Okay.
That red one?
Because I realize I'm kind of bouncing around and I don't want to confuse people.
That's kind of fun though.
Yeah. Okay, so I want this one to look a little bit different than this one, so I'm gonna kind of push the lighter values for this one. Okay?
Got it.
All right.
I like the red one because it looks like it's open, but we can see into it
Oh, nice.
because it's light on the front, you know?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yep. And we will come through too and add another layer here in a little bit, which will make it even, we'll embrace that even more. Okay, so that's good right now for our tulips. We're gonna let those dry, the bloom part, and we're gonna move on to the stems. And in fact, I may actually go ahead and use our tool and dry them so that I don't mix the green with the pink and red colors.
Get a little muddy in there.
Yes. If you don't have a heated craft tool, you can just give it a few minutes to dry.
Snack break.
Yeah, take a little snack break. Sometimes I have trouble waiting for it to dry, and I regret it because it gets tacky. So do take a few minutes, take a little break and let it dry. Or work in multiple, start a new one while this is drying.
Ooh, yeah, get a
And
background
then
started.
double the fun. I'm not gonna worry about being completely dry, but that should help so that it doesn't create mud or mix in with our green colors. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and wipe off my brush. Ooh, look at that.
Beautiful.
Sometimes my brush board turns into like one of my favorite things. Especially when we can start with kind of a deep, like a dark tone. That's nice. Okay, go and rinse your brush. And then now we are ready to add our first layer of stems. Okay. Clean off my brush. All right, so I'm gonna show you the step sheet here because it's very subtle, but in the background here you can see the base layer of the long stems coming from the base of the tulip, as well as some longer leaf shapes. And so we're gonna put that in now, but don't worry too much about there being a lot of contrast. From the background, the main thing we're trying to do right now is cover up the lines that we made when we transferred our outline, and also just kind of give our stems some shape so that we can go in later and add some of these other accents and details. Does that make sense?
Makes
okay.
sense.
Ooh, also, you know what I forgot? Wow, this isn't wet anymore. I was gonna say, next time, remind me, I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna scratch in, okay, on our next layer.
Yes.
All right, so let's go ahead and pick up, and can you see my palette? If I can turn it this way again, or.
There you go.
Does that look okay? All right, so for this one, you're gonna mix like a gray green. So I'm gonna take some yellow, and I'm gonna take some blue, okay, and I'm gonna take a little bit of black. Need a little more blue there. So I want like a blue, gray, green, if that makes sense.
Blue, gray, green.
Blue, gray, green. So yeah, so you want, actually no, I should say it is a desaturated blue-green, is what I really should say.
Got it.
Okay, does that make more sense?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of make a pile here of my paint color, and that looks pretty good to me, and I don't mind that I'm using some of these other piles to mix in. It really, I think, adds to kind of the whole picture there, adds to how it all kind of fits together. All right, so I'm going to add some water there to make this nice and fluid. Because as you know, when we did our practice strokes here, the more fluid it is, the easier it's gonna be to get those long strokes. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that I have paint on the front 3/4 of my brush, and especially give it a little dab on the toe of the brush right before I make my strokes, because I wanna make sure that that is fully loaded. Okay. All right, so let's start with this one here. And I'm gonna just touch the base of the bloom, and then I'm just gonna kind of pull it down. Okay?
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. And don't worry too much about like the exactness. One of the best ways that you can make a painting look more expressive is to just kind of let it flow. If we spend a lot of time kind of like going over and over and over and over it again, that really takes away from the expressive feel of it, and it makes it look a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? Not quite as expressive, not quite as free.
Okay.
A little tight.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to trace this one down here. Okay. Do this little baby one.
Itty bitty.
And then I'm just going to be careful when I'm up here to just not put too much paint, not to get paint on my actual bloom parts. So here I'll just need kind of a little dab. Okay. You can switch to a smaller brush for that part if you want to. And in fact, I think, let's see. Got it.
Nice.
Okay. And I'm just looking to make sure, okay, this stem is going to there. So I got that. And then, okay, we need to do our, I'm going to do this one first because I want this one to be in front. So I'm going to do, this one comes here. And again, like we're going to add so many more leaves and details that this is just to give it an idea of there being stems there. Okay, so I'm going to touch the bottom of this and just pull it down. Okay,
Nice.
So those are the stems. Let's add a few leaves using my same mixture that I've made here of a blue-green, a gray blue-green, like kind of a desaturated blue-green. I'm going to come through and I'm going to make, so I'm going to make some of these outside ones, just a few. All right, so let's do one maybe here, okay? And let's do one kind of, I'm going to have one coming off of the page.
I like that.
Okay,
Yes, please.
so I'm going to start off of the page and just bring it down.
Oh,
Okay.
there it is.
Yep. And maybe I'll have a little friend there. Okay.
Like
What do
watching
you think
this
about that?
thing grow in real life.
And I probably want to bring another one over here too. And I'm going to pull it all the way off the page so that it looks like it's growing out of the page, right?
Yes.
We don't see the end of the stems
No one wants to see that anymore.
or the ground or the vase or whatever, right? And then I'm going to add a few more of these, kind of maybe one there, maybe one kind of in the middle there. And if you see what I did here, I started here and then I pushed and pulled down to get it kind of a wider stem or leaf. Actually, that's probably more of a leaf. A few more, let's add a few more just to kind of fill it out here. Maybe one there and a little touch there. And how about something here, what do you think?
Okay.
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 So that is great for your base layer of your stems and leaves. Okay. I'm going to, and then for our next step, we are going to add some white and make it a brighter color. So I'm going to add some white to this, and I'm going to add some yellow. So what we're doing now is we are going to make a more green. And honestly, like this is just how I did it when I made this project, but you really can like do whatever shades and tones that you want of your grays or of your greens and your blues. Just have fun. Like what looks good to you. Also, if you find comfort and kind of doing the same thing I'm doing, no worries. Copying and following kind of an example is a great way to still learn a lot of skills.
Absolutely.
Yes. So don't feel bad about that.
And I love the background on the one you're doing right now.
Yeah?
Yeah. A little more blue and then that dark. It's just so good.
Well, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay. So I'm just kind of creating a little bit of a bright green, and you can see that it's a little bit brighter and less desaturated and a little bit lighter in value. Okay, so I'm just trying to add some layer and some dimension to it. Make it look like there's a lot going on. There's some depth. All right, make sure it's a nice consistency or viscosity, so it's nice and flows well for you so that you can get those nice pulls. Okay. And then I'm just going to add a few of these. So let's maybe do one like there.
That was good.
Brave, be brave.
Whoa.
Okay, so see, I just kind of pulled down.
Yep.
If you start doing this and you start to feel nervous, you're like, I don't want to ruin it. Get your practice sheet out again and just do a few more and just push down and pull. That one didn't look as good. See, I'm afraid to touch this.
Ooh, yeah.
So just, okay, so I'm gonna push down and I'm gonna pull. Don't be afraid, you can do this. And you know what? If you don't like it, what can you do?
Start over?
You can paint over it.
Paint
student.
over it. Get again.
You know, you don't have to throw away anything,
No.
really. You can just, if you don't like it, you can paint something else or you can paint over it. It's great.
Turn it into a book cover.
All right, so
Make
I'm
it
just gonna
real
add a
thick.
few more here and I'm gonna try and bring this all the way down. And I don't mind the brush strokes showing. I in fact think that looks, I like that look.
Oh, I love
So I'm
the
gonna
brush
embrace
strokes.
that. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna add some here and we'll do some kind of there and there. And then how about a little, we'll do a couple little, bloop, bloop, there. And maybe something kind of in here, like that. We'll kind of pretend that kind of went behind there, behind those stems. What do you think?
That's the
There we
beauty
go.
too. You can pretend whatever you want with this.
I want to add a
You're
little more.
making it.
There we go. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm trying to look at my example, and I'm going to stop doing that, and I'm just going to kind of be free. Because I'm like, why am I doing that? Okay, so I'm going to brush off a little bit of this green paint. Okay, and then I'm going to add some blue to it. So you don't have to wash it off all the way. I just want to wipe a little bit off of it because I want my next color to be more of a blue shade. So we're going to come in and we're going to do this color here. It's kind of a desaturated
yes.
blue. I love using blue for leaves. I think it's nice and, you know, I think that looks really good on this dark background. All right, so I'm gonna take this pile I was already working in, I'm just gonna add blue. I do this all the time. I just kind of have a pile I'm working in and I keep adding to it. So I want it to be a little lighter. I'm gonna go ahead and grab some more white. And then that is fairly bright. So I'm gonna add just a tiny bit of black to it, just to tone it down, just a little.
Ooh, that looks good.
Yeah. What do you think? You like that?
No, well, I mean, yes.
There we go.
I mean,
Would you say no
yes.
if you didn't?
Well,
I don't know if you would.
I mean,
You're
it's
too nice.
your painting.
Okay, so my palette is a bit messy, but do see that I'm keeping my warm colors here.
Oh, yeah.
My bloom colors are here, and my stem colors are here together.
I just see that.
You can organize your palette however you feel most comfortable. If you like to keep things really neat and tidy, you can just make your palette where you go white, yellow, red, and then your blue and your black kind of value in a order from value, lightest to darkest. Or you can just kind of be free, like I am,
Yes.
and have fun with it. But I am keeping the idea in mind of not contaminating my warms and my cools. All right, add a little bit of water to this mixture to make sure that you can have a nice fluid stroke. If your paintbrush starts getting kind of clumpy, just scrape it on the edge of something like that. So that's not so far up to the ferrule, and get it back on the tip, okay? All right, so I'm just gonna come through here and just add a few. So I'm gonna go there, woo, there,
That's a good color.
there. What I'm kind of trying to do is not make it too symmetrical or too patterned where I have everything kind of perfectly laid out in a set pattern. I want it to look more free, and so I'm just gonna kind of not worry about that. And then see how I layered that one over the green one there? And then I just kind of want a couple little dabs. You can use the corner of your brush too to make some little like dabby dot things.
Dabby dot things.
That is a technical term.
It is.
Yeah.
That's in the dictionary now.
I just made it up.
LMA dictionary custom.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so I'm gonna call that good. You know?
I love that.
It's just kind of adding some more color and depth to this. All right, so now let me look at our step sheet here. oh, you know what I'm gonna do? While this is wet, I am gonna go and take
Yes.
the end of my paintbrush and I am going to scratch in like this. And if you have a
Look at those
palette knife, it
textures.
works even better. Do I have a palette knife? I do. Palette knives work even better. So I'm gonna go ahead and try that. Ooh, look at that.
Yep.
And say you, yours dried before you got to it, you can always paint over again with that same color and then scratch in. Or wait till your next layers. That's totally fine. One thing that happens when I scratch in is that I'll pick up a little bit of paint on my palette knife. You know what I do with that? I just throw it into the painting somewhere. If y'all can see Keenan's face right now, he's like,
Oh my goodness.
oh, Keenan, you're funny.
Look at the texture added to that leaf though.
Yeah, no, it's you know, like there are
Oh
not
my.
rules.
There are no rules.
You're applying paint to paper, and whether you do it with a brush or a palette knife, or some people use their fingers, like when you're young, you know, have you ever finger painted?
Well,
When
yes.
you're younger? Well, yes. Well, good. I'm glad you had that experience. I do still know people that finger paint as adults.
I mean, I don't
They use their
think-
finger to kind of add some
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Add some-
there's nothing wrong with that at all.
layers. Okay. This is getting fun. Okay. But we're not
Getting.
We're not done. So I'm gonna rinse my brush a bit, but I'm not gonna worry because I'm still gonna be working in my cool tones. I'm not gonna worry about it being completely clean because we're all about blending all of these colors together and adding some different tones and temperatures and tints, right? Okay.
yes.
All right, so the next one that we'll do is we'll go through here and we'll add this lime green color. What do you think about that?
I love that. I love
So we're
that
gonna,
idea.
it's a medium yellow green. So I'm going to use quite a bit of yellow. So I'll just start a little, where should I start? I want you guys to be able to see it. Maybe right here?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
a great spot.
So I'll start with some yellow and then I'll add some blue. And that's very saturated. And so to desaturate that, I'm going to add a tiny bit of black. Okay.
Put a little shade in there.
Throw a little shade in there.
Throw a
Is
little
that what you're trying
shade
to
in
say?
there.
And then I do also want to add some white to this. Okay. There we go. What do you think about that?
That is a great green.
You like that? Okay.
Yes.
Kind of what we're doing is creating a warmer green so that it can stand out from some of the other colors that we've put on here. All right, again, add enough water so that it's fluid so that when I'm brushing back and forth, there's not a lot of effort there, it glides. But you don't want it too wet and runny. It's a nice balance that you find. I guess what they kind of say is the consistency of maybe cream.
What kind of cream? Sour cream?
That's a good point. Like heavy whipping cream.
Oh, okay.
Or half and half, or whole milk. You know, I don't know. I think more the heavy whipping cream is probably the best
Delicious.
thing to think. Do you use heavy whipping cream?
I have. But
You have?
I have used it. It's mainly for baking,
Ah, yes.
you know?
Yes. Have you actually whipped cream from that?
I have not.
From heavy whipping cream?
No.
Okay, so with these, actually, you know what? I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna dab off this paint, and I'm gonna switch to my smaller brush for these, so I can add just a little more of a dainty detail.
Nice.
Okay.
Dainty.
This
good
brush
word.
is already wet from earlier, so I'm just gonna dip it in my paint. Okay, ready? Here we go.
Ready.
Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of start adding.
Yep. That was it. That's the ticket.
And notice how I'm just flicking. I'm not, I think one of the things when we first start painting, and I used to do this too, is we kind of want to go like this. We want to go, okay, let me get this perfect here. Let me do this. Let me, okay, let me go over it again and again and again, and then we lose that energy. So really challenge yourself to just flick.
Throw it in. Look at that. That's a leaf.
Just flick.
Stem.
Now, see how it drags a little more, creates
Yes.
some more dry brush look when it's on the plain paper. When you're painting with the, on this one that already has a background painted in, it flows a little better.
Interesting.
It's a little smoother on your brush. Okay, so yeah, I'm just gonna kind of come through, and these are gonna be a little more like little accents. So I'll add a couple there. feel like I need a little something in here, so I'm just gonna add a little dab. And maybe I'll put something a little stronger there. Again, there aren't any rules. The main thing I'm looking to do is not make it too evenly spread. So what I might do is add a double there. So add two kind of together.
Yes, big fan.
Yes, big fan. Okay. Anywhere else? Let's see. Maybe one little thing there, maybe there. And what about a couple little dots?
Ooh, that was nice.
So what I did there is I just used the corner of my paintbrush and I just did a couple little dabs. I like to do dots in like 2s or 3s. You can get a little crazy. And I fully support it. You should do it. And I know that there's more coming, so I'm not too worried. Okay, if you've gotten to this point, great job. Keep it up. All right, so next, let's see, I think we are going to, here we're gonna go ahead and take the end of our paintbrush and we're going to scratch into our wet paint that we just applied. Oh, look at that.
Yep, that's amazing.
And I'm not going for any particular shape. What I'm trying to do is just kind of break up the solid mass of color to add some more interest to it, some more texture. And it picked up a little bit of this yellow paint, so I'll just kind of rub it on here.
Throw it around.
Yeah. All right, so that's a great place to stop right there. Let's see. Next, we're gonna add some more to our blooms. Okay, so we're gonna kind of leave our leaves. Leave
the leaves.
I didn't do that on purpose.
Came naturally.
Right. First, I'm gonna add on here though. Oh, look at that.
Right? Wow.
Are we getting too excited about the brushboard though?
I don't think so.
Okay. So I'm gonna give my palette a quick spray because I do want to keep working with these colors and I don't want them to dry out too quickly on me. If you don't have a spray bottle, you can just kind of even just flick some water on there.
Sneeze. Get a nice even spread.
Pretend you did not say that. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I know right away like this yellow flower is calling to me. So I want to add some more yellow to it to kind of play off of the orange. So I'm gonna pick up what's left of this yellow on my palette. If you need more paint, add it anytime. And I'm gonna grab a little bit of yellow from here, not touching the green side. See how there's a little bit of green on there from me dipping with a blue brush. I'm gonna use the clean side. Okay, I'm gonna make a yellow pile here. And I don't care if a little bit of pink mixes in. In fact, I kind of prefer that. But I am gonna add some white as well. Ooh, look at that. A nice soft yellow.
It's a very soft yellow.
And I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna plan a little bit more for these. So I know I wanna leave, I can kind of show you on the original here. I know I wanna leave some of this orange showing through. But I also want some of this yellow in front because I want it to look like an open flower, like the cup shape of a tulip. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to pick a few little spots where I'm gonna make some strokes. I'm gonna just push down, okay? And push down again. And then maybe I'll add a couple little wisps over here. Okay? And I'm not done yet, but I am gonna go ahead and just kind of scratch into this to make it look like some petals. And then on top of that, I'm gonna go ahead and add more white to my pile. And then I'm gonna kind of come in and add a little more. And I want some of the dry brush look. Okay, so I'm gonna let it drag a little bit. Okay, and then I can go through and add a little more.
That orange peeks through a little more.
The orange peeks through, yep. And so I'm gonna wipe this brush out. You can see that green coming through there again. I really need clean water. Can you get me some clean water?
Can you get you some clean water?
Yeah.
I'll get you clean water. You would take your basin?
I realize, yeah, if you don't mind, that would be awesome.
That's what I'm here for,
I think
Lori.
it's tinting my brush green. Okay. While Keenan's doing that, I'll add a little bit more white to this yellow pile once again, because while it's wet, I can work wet and wet. What I want to do is get that in there before it starts to dry too much so I don't have a tacky a tacky paint where it kind of is sticky. And then I'm just gonna pick a couple spots to add some highlights. And so maybe I'll do like a couple little strokes there, okay? And then maybe just like a little bit there, okay? So those are my highlights. I'm gonna come back one more time in a few minutes and add some pure yellow just to add a little bit more detail there. But otherwise that is good. So now let's go ahead and go to this flower, working with, I can leave most of this on my brush. So I'm gonna come up here and do this peach flower and add some more detail there. So let me add a little bit of red to this color and some yellow. Get that nice peach again. Thank you, Keenan.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Next time we'll have two, right? Have a replacement one ready.
Basins.
We're learning. Okay, so right now I'm mixing this peachy color. And I can hold this up and see that it's lighter. And but I think I want a tiny bit more of the red. Okay, so I'm just gonna come over here and just add some strokes. That's not really high contrast, but I still like it. It's adding some dimension, but I'm gonna go ahead and add some more white to my palette. Let's see, I'll add it up here. Add some more white to my palette. Wrong pile. There we go. And then go ahead and add that on there. Ooh, look at that.
Ooh.
And so if you turn your brush this way into a stroke, you get a wider stroke. If you turn it vertically, you get a thinner stroke.
Yes, please.
Yes. And then I'm just gonna come in here and just kind of scratch that up.
Oh.
Keenan, you're awesome.
I'm telling you, this is great to watch.
Yay. Keenan's good for the confidence, I think. He's a confidence booster, morale booster.
Yeah, morale.
He knows I'm new, and this is, one of my first tutorials, and so he's there.
You're nailing it. You're like a pro at this point.
Right. Okay, so while this is still wet, I added a little bit more white and a tiny bit of red. Okay, because all I'm trying to do is kind of vary my temperature and my value. So I'm gonna come in here, add a couple strokes. In fact, when I look at that, I'm like, I want more white. So I'm gonna pick one of those corners over here to add some white rather than trying to add white to this whole pile. I'm just gonna kind of use an edge of it and add white because you don't need as much paint if you do that. Okay, and then I'm gonna kind of, there we go. Kind of add some.
Ooh, that's nice.
I don't want all of my strokes to be nice and thin. I do want a variety. So I'm gonna kind of leave it like that, okay? And then go ahead and add that in again. We have one final layer to do on the bloom, so don't worry with this pass about making it perfect. We're gonna add a little bit more at the very end. Next, we're gonna go ahead and move on to our peachy pink flower. And I'm just gonna use the same pile that I've been working with here and add some red to make it a tiny bit more pink.
Ooh, that's a pretty pink.
Yeah. Okay, and I'm just gonna kind of see what that looks, yep, okay. Ooh, it's got some yellow in it, which makes it kind of warm looking. It's kind of nice. I like that. I'm gonna work with that big time. And now I'm gonna go ahead and add, I think, a little bit more white. So what I'm gonna do is my paint is getting kind of gloppy, so I'm gonna wipe off some of it. Either you can just kind of, look at that, just paint it off somewhere on a piece of paper or, yeah. All about problem solving here. And then I'm gonna add some more white to this. Just to give a few more little highlights. Ooh.
Yeah, that's
Ooh, I like that.
That's good.
I'm doing a few little shorter strokes. There we go. And then once again, I love the scratching in, you guys. I like to do that.
What's the name of that? Sgraffito?
Sgraffito.
Sgraffito.
Is S-G-R-A-F-F-I-T-O, I believe. Sgraffito.
Nice.
That is something that I learned the name of after I was already doing it. I didn't realize that it had that name until a little bit later on. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Wow.
That's kind of a fun name.
Yeah, that's a super
technique.
fun name.
Yeah, so we talk about that in one of our acrylic beginner series lessons. Sgraffito. I think it's part 2 of when we talk about brushes. So right now I'm gonna add a little bit more red because I'm looking at this and I'm saying, I want some more pink tones in there. So just have fun. There's a fine line between having fun and overworking a piece though. So limit yourself to maybe a few little touches, right? Rather than keeping going. And I speak from experience, right, with that. So I'm just gonna add a couple little touches because I want it to feel like a little bit of an accent color. You know, I'm gonna add one more right there. Okay, knowing that I'm coming back, I'm okay leaving that. It's close, we're getting there. Now let's go ahead and look at our red flower here. I'll wipe that off. Don't have to wash it though. I'm gonna come here with the red, make a pile. And for this next layer, we wanna go lighter. And this is kind of like a peachy red color, or a warmer, lighter pink. So I'm gonna add a little bit of, actually no, let me get a new yellow pile here. I don't want green in there.
Your palette looks awesome.
I hope so. I hope people are okay with the mess that I'm making here and are okay with the it not being perfectly put on the palette. This is how I work though. This is real. This is how I work, 100%. All right, so I'm adding some yellow in here and some white to my red to create kind of a nice warm red and a little more white and a tiny bit more yellow. Okay, so then, you know, what I can do is I can kind of hold this up here, kind of see, okay, that's a little bit lighter. I think that's gonna work. And some of it's trial and error as well. And then I'm gonna kind of wash it in a little bit of water to make that more fluid. There we go. And then I'm just gonna go for it.
Ooh. Yep. Good combos.
You like that? Okay, so what I did is I just varied my strokes. I had some big, thick ones and some small ones and then a couple little wisps. And then I'm gonna scratch in. I am kind of doing like a petal shape when I'm scratching in. And then I want a couple little highlights in the back potentially. So add a little bit there. Now, right now I want to go ahead and add a little more red and just come in a little bit more there. And I'm not worried about this looking exactly like the original, because each piece is going to be a little bit different depending on who makes it, how you feel, time of day, when you ate last.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. So have fun. And I'm totally going to paint on this table, Gannon. I'm totally going to use this paper to paint on.
Perfect.
All right. So I'm going to keep working with this flower by adding a little bit more white so I can create a little bit more of a highlight. So here's kind of where I put the, nope, it was over here, wasn't it? Okay, there we go. Add some white, even more. And then for this, I'm not worried about it being completely mixed. And then I'm just gonna psh, psh. Okay, and then psh, psh. The sound effects are important.
Sound effects are perfect. You're nailing those.
There we go. And then just a little bit of scratching in there.
These flowers are coming to life.
Yes. Okay. So now we need to do these ones. And these are all, so these three are pretty much the same color. We just have some different value mixed in there. That way it's not too, they kind of help bring some balance.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna paint this here, y'all. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get a little bit more red. And I'm going to, what I wanna do here is I wanna add a little bit more of this dark pink in there, and I wanna add a little bit more of the red in that one. So kind of mixing what's already here, or you can mix a little bit of white in if your paint is already dry. Then take that color and just kind of put a little dab of that. I can tell I need a little bit more. This red is a little bit, acts a little bit as a transparent color. And so when you add a transparent color over an opaque color, you can deepen the color. So I'm adding a little bit of red over it, and it's not as opaque, it's transparent, so it's just kind of adding a nice glaze type effect, if you will. Okay, got that there, and I'm gonna add a few touches of that same thing here and there. And now I'll go into my white highlights. And more white. When you get started with acrylics, you will realize that you use white a lot. So when looking at purchasing paint or adding to your supply, don't forget the white. It's great to have lots of white. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of come here, add a couple more. Oh, you know, I know that needs to be lighter. A couple more little highlights. And then maybe a little couple, like a couple little touches here. I want that one to be kind of in the background, so I'm not gonna give that as much attention. And then a little bit of scratching in. Same thing down here. This one looks pretty good, so I'm just gonna come in and add like a couple little touches of lighter, and then, yep, just like that.
Nice.
Sometimes holding back is the hardest part.
Yes, that's true.
Yes.
Especially when they start to really come to life and give you a little more gumption to get them, you know?
Yes, 100%. Okay, so we did our, added some more detail to our blooms. The last layer that we're gonna do with our blooms is to be adding some white, some like almost pure white highlights, but I'm gonna wait till this dries to get to that point. So now what we're gonna do is come back to our stems and leaves and add a few more pops of color. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Awesome. So I will go ahead and rinse off my brush now, but first I'm gonna kind of wipe it off on here. A nice little highlight. All right. And Keena got me fresh water, so we are good to go. Okay, so for these next stems, I'm going to go for a little bit more blue-green, I believe. Yeah, so we have, what I'm gonna try and do is go for this kind of seafoam color right here.
Ooh, seafoam.
Seafoam.
Seafoam blue or green?
I think it's a blue-green.
Blue-green.
I would call it a blue-green tint.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so to make that color, I'm going to start with some blue, add some white. And again, I am not worried about some of this, my cool colors mixing together. I think it adds interest. So I'm just gonna kind of go with it. Okay. Add some more white here to get kind of a nice bright blue-green color. Look at that. That is beautiful.
That is.
Isn't that pretty?
Yes.
Ooh, okay, I'm gonna test it there.
It almost matches
my brush
your
is,
brush.
Hey, you're right. Look at
Wow.
that. I'm gonna wipe off some of the glop on my brush and add a little bit of water to get kind of a nice fluid paint, because again, we're doing those expressive strokes for our leaves that we've been practicing and working on. All right, I'm ready. So we're just gonna kind of pick a few areas to add these touches to. All right, so I'm gonna kind of look around and say, where do I need a little bit more color? And I'm gonna go there. Ooh, look at that. And maybe I'm gonna go there and bring that one off the page.
Excellent.
And it looks lonely, so I'm gonna add another one.
Excellent.
And so I like what's going on there. Add some balance. Maybe I'll do kind of a little bit of a couple little dots there. So what I did there is I did a little, what would you call that? Elongated dot, a little bit of a leaf shape, I guess you could say, a little one, and then a little bit of larger one, and one coming in this way. It's kind of making like a little triangle. So the top,
angles.
and that angle, and then that angle. Okay? You can do it.
You got it.
You got it.
We believe
And if you're
in
nervous,
you.
just practice on your practice sheet. Okay, and a few more here. What else? Let's see. I think I need something in there. I'm gonna make it come that way though. Ooh, look at that. Honestly, everybody just needs a key in going, ooh, ah.
Ooh.
And you're gonna feel great about anything you make. That's so funny. I love it though, it's great. Okay, some little dots, maybe some dots here. Again, I'm not worried about like any brush stroke. I like the brushiness, right, where you can see it's kind of like a little bit of a dry brush. Okay, I like that. I think that's good.
I like it
Knowing
too.
when to stop is part of, it's half the battle, right?
It's a skill that is
Not
also
overdo
learned.
it. Yes, definitely. And even though I know better, I still sometimes overdo it, and then it's okay. I have to tell myself it's all right. I had fun. I enjoyed the process. All right, so now what I want to do is add this yellowy green, this really bright pop of this yellow green here.
Okay.
And we'll do that. So I'm going to take, this is still wet on my palette. If yours is, what you can do is just take some yellow and add a little bit of blue. Mix that in. And honestly, we want this to lean yellow quite a bit. So I'm going to actually add some more yellow. It's kind of an avocado-y
Ooh, I love avocado.
green. Very yellowy green. All right. Okay. All right, what do you think?
Yep.
Is that what I want to do is make sure it's different enough from this color. So I'm going to add a little bit more yellow, maybe a lot more yellow, and some white.
I would have done the same thing.
Would you have?
Yep.
That makes me feel better. Awesome. And then I'm going to go ahead and just dab off some of that extra glop. One thing with this project, when you're mixing your paints, your brush, if you get paint up into the ferrule, one thing that I've done on quite a bit is I'll just put it in between my paper towel and then pull. And that wipes it off quite a bit there. And then I just pick up my paint once again. Add some water, make sure it's nice and fluid. Okay, so now we're gonna add these bright pops and hold me back, right?
Hold me back, coach.
Okay. Here we go. Ooh, look at that. So I'm deciding to just be bold. Okay?
Oh, that's a bold color.
And see how fast that was? And
Yeah.
like we're not thinking about it. We're not worried about the painstaking, like making it perfect.
And smooth, fast and smooth.
Yeah. Totally. Okay, and I'm having fun. Are you having fun, Keenan?
Yes.
That one was a little big for being at the top, so I'm gonna kind of just make a little partner for it up there. So kind of balance it out a little bit. There, maybe some like little dots in there. Okay.
Yeah, that is a bold green.
Is that a bold green?
Yeah, I love it.
And maybe a couple little more pops somewhere. There we go. That one looks like it needs a friend, so I'm gonna add that there. And maybe even they need a little trio there.
Look at that.
Okay, so I'm gonna leave it like that, but I'm gonna go in and scratch in. So I'm just, ooh!
Cool,
See how
that
that
was
picks
a
up the
good
blue?
one.
See how it picked up the blue from behind
Yes.
it? That is one of the lovely things about the
Oh my
layering with acrylics.
goodness.
And then while I have some of this like really bright yellow green, I'm gonna make some little dots
Oh,
using my brush. Just want to make it
all
look.
those little detail marks.
Just want to make it look free and loose and fresh. And honestly, like if you want to paint loose, like I said before, you have to let go of something. Usually it's letting go of our control and our need to be perfect. So if you can get to that point where you feel comfortable just letting go, and I know it can be hard, you're doing great. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that because I know my final details are gonna come in and be white. But what I wanna do right now is go ahead and reinforce the idea of my stems because they're getting lost in there. So what I'm gonna do is, here's my base color, which is kind of a blue-gray or a gray blue-green.
Blue-green.
Blue-green. So I'm gonna go ahead and wipe off, let's wipe off this, most of the paint on my brush right now. Still using my 1/2" brush. And I'm going to make a blue-green. Okay, so some blue and some yellow and some white. And I'm gonna add a little bit of black to get kind of a more desaturated look. Now I think on my palette this is probably a little too blue, but I could be wrong, so I'm just gonna kind of test it. You know what, that's not bad.
That's not bad. That's a good color.
Yeah, I'm gonna add a little bit of white though, because what I want is for it to stand out a little, but not too much, not to be too overpowering. just to kind of reinforce the idea that the stems are there, kind of add a little bit of a highlight. Okay, so let's try. So I'm just gonna kind of just barely touch the stems. And you know what, that looks too much like this to me, so I'm gonna add a little more blue and a little more black. I need more blue. Again, like, be generous with your paint. And I think we should celebrate when we empty a paint tube. I think that should be a moment where we're like, you know what? I painted so much
Celebrate and reward yourself with a new tube.
There you go. Just keep it coming. Keep it coming. Okay, so I decided to kind of go a little more blue so that it can kind of stand out a little from, there we go. Okay.
Oh, that's nice.
So I just want the idea of some stems to be there without overpowering the piece, the composition. And so I'm just gonna kind of reinforce. And if you can't really see your stem anymore, just make a new one, you know? That's okay. So I'm just gonna kind of dab there and kind of get a little bit of more of a point here. Got that one, maybe dab there a little. When I'm doing a stem, I often don't want to do the complete line. I want to kind of have it be a little bit dashed so that, like, skip a little space. So I'll do a little there, but like right here, I did a little and then I kind of lifted it up and did a little more just to kind of break up that line so that it's not quite so obvious. Yeah. Okay, I think, did we get that one yet? There we go. And then just for good measure, I'll kind of add a few little touches of the same color. I might even add a little layer there. Okay, what do you think? Do we need anything else? Keenan, do you see any areas where we need anything else?
I'm just excited to see the
finished
white
product. Yes.
'Cause I think that white is going to be, I mean, it's looking good.
Looking good. Okay. All right, so what I'm gonna do while the leaves and stems dry is I'm gonna go add my final touches to my blooms. So we're almost there. You have almost done it all the way. All right. And since we just we just did a lot of green, I'm gonna make sure I take a little bit extra time to make sure I get all of the green out of my brush. Now, when I'm working and painting at home, what I like to do, or in the studio here, like what I like to do is have multiple brushes so that I don't have to wash them out so much. So what I would have is like a brush here for warm and a brush here for cool, and I would just kind of keep going. Sometimes I have even more than that, Keenan, actually, yeah.
It sounds like a good method.
I like having multiple.
Good method of
Yes.
a lot happening at the same time.
Right. I noticed I didn't wash this one out.
That can't be overwhelming.
You know, it's just kind of, it's the idea of like an abundance mindset, if you will, you know, like just kind of feeling like free and feeling like, you know what, more is more, it's good.
Well, and if it's part of your process.
It totally is part of my process.
Definitely not, yeah, that's excellent.
Okay, so I'm making a little bit of mess here, but for a reason. I'm clearing off a little space here so I can have my pure white without it getting too contaminated. So I'm gonna put that here. There we go. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come in and add some highlights. So as you can see, so if I look at my yellow here, I have a few little highlights. Now I do have some highlights there, but I wanna add a few like super highlights, right? Some kind of a little bit of pure white, or almost pure white, to be quite honest. So I will probably, what I'll do is take some of this yellow and then put it into my white. So it's not completely white, but it's very close, okay?
Nice.
Are you with me there? And this can be a little thicker too. So just the palest yellow or just a tiny touch of yellow in your white. I know I need more paint on my brush. Okay, so here we go, ready? Whoop, whoop. I'm kind of following where I have my other highlights. I just kind of put a couple little touches, okay? And you know what, I want something right in here. Actually, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna come back and add some pure yellow. I talked about that earlier. Ooh. Okay, so now I'm gonna move on to our peach one. And I'm gonna kind of just touch, I just wanna pick up a little something so it's not completely stark white.
That's a good color.
Okay, and then I'm just gonna kind of add some touches. Where should we add them? Let's see. Maybe one there, maybe a couple there. Okay. And if I think that's a little bit too strong, I can take this and kind of break it up a little bit, so it doesn't feel like so stark. You could also take even like a clean brush and kind of move it around.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. It was a little bit wet, so it helped kind of move the paint around, but even a dry brush would help kind of pick up some of that paint if you felt like it was a little much, which is where I was kind of how I was feeling. All right, so now I'm going to add a tiny bit more pink. This is barely noticeable, so you can do pure white, or you can kind of do what I'm doing and kind of add a tiny little bit of a color. And let's do this one here. This one, there we go. And we like things in thirds. Sometimes I may even use my finger. But someone's gonna
finger painting.
Say something. Yeah. Yeah. And you can work on it if you want to. But then again, I feel like, you know what, that's pretty good. All right, now we're gonna move on to a red. So I'm going to keep my pile here, and I'm gonna add a tiny bit of this red, okay? Maybe a tiny bit more, but a very, very light value.
Yeah.
And then I'm just gonna I'm gonna use the corner of my brush for this one and just kind of tap, tap, and then over here, dot, dot. That is kind of a strong, so you know what I'm gonna do is just kind of add a little bit more red there. Come in, just kind of feather it, if you will. Okay, what do you think? We getting there?
I love that red one. That red flower.
That's your favorite?
That's been my favorite this whole time.
Nice. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to our 3 cooler pink flowers, and honestly I'm just going to use the pile that I already created here and add some little touches. So, boop. So kind of like when we're doing our leaves and we just kind of do like a kind of a quick stroke, that's what I want to do here. Just kind of tap, and you can even, if you want to paint even looser, you hold the end of your brush like this. It really takes away control, which for some of us sounds great, and other of us it sounds scary maybe, but just go with it, it's fine. All right, so we've got that, and then I kind of like that one actually the way it is. I think I might just add a tiny touch. So I'm gonna wipe off the paint of most of my brush, and then I'm just gonna kind of drag my brush just a tiny bit there.
Ooh, I like that.
Yes.
The dry
actually,
brush stroke, that's excellent.
Yeah, I kind of wanna do that here too. There we go. So I'm just barely tapping the painting. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna kind of take a look and see if there's anything else that I wanna add or do to my painting. So this is kind of our final details stage. So one of the things that I liked about this painting was I went in and I added kind of just a little blush here, like a little pink tone there, just to kind of add kind of a little surprise, but subtle surprise. So I think I might do that here.
Subtle surprise.
Yeah, and so I have plenty of paint on my palette that I can find pink. If you want to make your own pink, of course you can do the red and the white, and then if you want it to be warm, you add a little bit of yellow. But I feel like I've got plenty of pink to work with here. So I'm gonna get a little bit of red, and then I'm gonna add a little bit of yellow just to warm it up a little bit. Okay, and I know I want this to not be super light, just kind of more of a medium value. So here's what I'm doing. I'm just gonna kind of go in there and I'm just gonna kind of whoop, whoop, and maybe whoop. There we go, okay? So I like that. I might scratch into it too, just to kind of break up the pieces there. And then, you know, I might kind of do that here too. Okay, not a lot that I'm doing, but it's kind of those nice little finishing touches that I like to look at my paintings. Okay, so here I just want to do a tiny bit more with some yellow. So I'm going to come in and just add a little bit of yellow in here. So yellow by itself is going to be somewhat transparent. So I can kind of just add a little bit of a layer. Do you see that?
Barely.
Barely. So I'm adding vibrancy or saturation without adding a lot of paint, because I'm just using the yellow straight, and since it's somewhat transparent, this yellow, and and less opaque, it kind of just adds like a little layer of, like a glaze of some saturated color. You see that?
I can kind of see it.
Yeah. We can.
Yep.
I think the top camera will probably show it too.
Yes.
But, yeah. Okay, so I think our balloons are done. I think they look good.
Well, I think.
Do you like it?
I love the red one.
You love the red one.
I can't get over that one.
I wish I could pick it for you and give it to you.
I know. Oh my goodness.
Okay, last part, final details with our white on our stems and leaves. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick up this pile that I have of white. Don't need to waste it. And I'm going to make sure I have some fluidity. So add some water, make sure it's kind of gliding. Okay, and I'm gonna go for it. I am gonna kind of get some of the paint off of the side of my brush and then have it more on the tip of my brush. All right, so here you can kind of see some of the white details that I did. These are a little more subtle and a little thinner. Just some like idea, the touch kind of add a little bit of energy. So I'm gonna start here with kind of a longer stroke there. Woo. See that? And that one will talk to that one. And then we'll add maybe something there and maybe a little bit going that way.
What a contrast.
It really pops.
It does. And it looks
really
so
pops.
good.
And then I love adding little like dots.
Yeah, the dots are great.
Dots and, you know, a couple here, a couple there. Little wisps. A group of 3. And again, my paint is fairly fluid, so it really helps me to get my brush moving. I'm gonna add a little something here, I think. Okay. Have fun with this, but you know, have some restraint maybe. I do get to a point where I'm like, okay, I should probably stop, but I don't want to.
No such thing.
Okay. All right, I think that is pretty good, Keenan. What do you think?
I mean.
Have we done it? Okay. I think I'm gonna leave that like that.
I love it.
Yay. Okay, we did it. I can't wait to see what you come up with, and keep in mind too, like you can change the color palette and do this over and over and over again and just have fun. You can even change the flower shapes if you want to do your favorite flower. So make sure if you do this project that you post on Instagram at Let's Go Make Art or Facebook in our acrylic group at Let's Make Art Acrylic.